Alright everyone, welcome to a very short mini episode of the Retro or Die podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, hello. You're listening to this on iTunes or the website, retroordiepodcast.com. Hello. This is a mini episode, just with me. I'm solo this time. Me and my partner, Forrest, will be doing the regular scheduled show this Wednesday when we record it, and I will upload it on Friday. That will be all of his E3 thoughts of stuff that he saw and is excited for, but because I watched all of the events and I have more reference as far as video games as a whole, I thought I'd do a mini episode just showing my thoughts and also bringing up some topics that have been going on recently, and especially one today that caught my attention, of stuff that normally doesn't catch my attention, but because it involves someone who's, I guess, within the realm of nerd culture and video games and horror movies and that kind of stuff, I thought it'd be prevalent to bring him up today. So, E3. All in all, E3 wasn't terrible this year. The last 2 years of E3, in my opinion, have been pretty dismal. Nothing really caught my attention in the last 2 years when it came to E3. And the reason for that is the last E3 that was actually prevalent was probably 2015 or 2014, when Doom was shown at E3, the 2016 one, and Fallout 4 was shown. Now, granted, those are one of my favorite gaming franchises, but that was also the last time I was actually excited for something to come out. So, E3, Microsoft's event was alright. It seemed like, Pete Hines was the CEO or whatever, talking head of Microsoft, was very open when it came to talking about what their plans are for the future and trying to be as transparent as possible when it comes to the Xbox One and what they're going to do with the next generation of games. My personal opinion, it's too early to be thinking of another Xbox console or another PlayStation console, because these consoles are, less than 5 years old, and the library for both of them is considerably small when you're talking about next-gen games. Xbox One has a lot more just for the fact that they're backwards compatible, and Sony isn't that way because their PlayStation Now service, where they let you rent games that were PlayStation 3 games or PS2 games that you can buy digitally, is very limited, and the PlayStation Now service, if you've ever used it before, is crap. Let's just be honest, it's crap. If you use a game that's more than freaking, 16-bit platform game, the thing will chug and disconnect like no other, even if you're hardlined into the console. Well, with that aside, Sony's conference was actually pretty embarrassing. I didn't finish that one. Just with the opening alone, when the guy's like, "Welcome to church," it rubbed me the wrong way altogether. Like, they're very unprepared. They didn't know what was going on. They didn't know how to speak to people that are the people that give them the money, the consumer. They have forgotten completely how to speak to a consumer. That's how far Sony has their head up their own ass these days. Very corporate speak, very nonchalant when it comes to, oh yeah, the game's going to come out and there's going to be all these DLC packs for it, and everyone's supposed to be happy about that. So, for me, Sony's conference was very weak, and I didn't finish it just because it was just getting too annoying. Nintendo hey, I gotta give it to Nintendo. Nintendo came out and they brought the fire when it came to giving the especially the hardcore Nintendo fans, what they want when it comes to their Pokemon games, when it comes to their Smash Brother games, and when it comes to, you know, all their mega platform games. They brought it. And their Smash Brothers game is the one that's getting the most attention right now because they're bringing all of the fighters back that used to be in the old generations, bringing back some new or bringing some new ones. And if they can continue this way and continuing to listen to fans of what they want, I could see updates coming out for this game where the roster is just going to keep growing with Nintendo characters that people probably have never seen or haven't seen on a console in years. So with that, I think Nintendo did way better than Sony, and Microsoft was so-so, which is funny because if you would have asked me a couple of years ago how Nintendo was compared to, Microsoft and Sony at E3, I would have said Nintendo was lacking a lot. But it's funny how the tides change when companies start listening to their consumer base and giving them what they want. And I partially I tip my hat to all this even happening of companies starting to listen more to Capcom. And the reason for this is Capcom has been remaking, Resident Evil games that people have been wanting and asking for years. Not just fucking doing some sort of small little digital remaster of the very old game of the polygon characters with the tank controls and putting them out there, even though they did do that for a little while just to sustain people. But they rebuilt Resident Evil, the first Resident Evil, from the ground up to make it a better working game. They did Resident Evil 0 to make it a better working game. And now that we're at the point of Resident Evil 2, which is my favorite Resident Evil game ever, and probably if you were to ask me in my top 10 video games of all time, Resident Evil 2 would be on that list. And if you're asking me about my top 3 horror video games of all time, Resident Evil 2 would probably be number 1 on that list. So that's how much I love Resident Evil 2. If you want to see, shameless plug, my Resident Evil 2 video game review, you can find it on my YouTube channel, Retro or Die. Now, my bias aside for Resident Evil 2, the remake trailer came out during E3, and I gotta say, I'm very impressed with the direction and how it went. I was speculative of how it might turn out, and luckily for me, and I'm sure many other fans agree, it looks like Capcom nailed it when it comes to trying to reimagine the atmosphere of how the game's going to look without changing the core mechanics or the core story of the game. When you're looking at the trailer and the gameplay footage of the first level, when Leon's walking around the police station, immediately, if you're anyone who's been playing this game as long as I have, you immediately notice that the police station layout has changed. Not a whole lot, but it's definitely changed enough to where you're like noticing, wait a minute, the little desk with the computer is now in front of the statue, in front of the police station when it was behind. The sergeant or cop guy, the black guy that, welcomes you in the original Resident Evil 2 game, says like, just go find other survivors, and locks himself in the little party room or whatever. He's outside of that room and the main hall with you. That's obviously different. And some of the layout's a little different. Leon's character face model, I can see what they're going for. They're going for a very young Leon, probably his early 20s, like 22, 23 Leon. He looks a little strange to me. Sounds a little strange, but it's passable. I'll give it a pass on it because they're attempting to bring this into that whole graphics look super real, like The Last of Us kind of deal. And what are you going to do? If you're using an actual actor's face, it's going to be hard to recreate a polygon face from freaking 1998. So, with that and with that said, I'll pass it. It gets a pass. Now, all in all, I think the game is going to be amazing. I think what they're doing here is what's going to bring Capcom full circle of being fully beloved by their fan base again. Now, Resident Evil 7 wasn't a bad game, and my review on it is on the Retro or Die channel, but like I said in that review, Resident Evil 7 was everything but a Resident Evil game. It's felt like its own IP with Resident Evil slapped on as a title in order to get funding or in order to actually get people to buy the game, because in the end they didn't know what to do with it. And the ending to that game is very obvious that they didn't know where to go with that ending. With that being said, if they keep doing this where they're taking the old games, Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3, Resident Evil Code Veronica X, and they're bringing them forth to the new genre consoles and these new generations of kids, they are not only appealing to the people that grew up when these games originally came out, but they're appealing to a new audience to make sure these games do not get forgotten in the annals of obscurity. Like, Resident Evil 2 has already started to be forgotten on the different consoles it came out on. Most people that I talk to about Resident Evil 2, as much as they love it, didn't know it came out on the Nintendo 64. They only knew it came out on the PS2 or on the GameCube. No one knew about the Nintendo 64 version of it. And there's also two different types of the Resident Evil 2 version on the N64. A Type A version and a Type B version. It all comes down to the boards. And that's another obscure thing that a lot of people don't know. You can find my Twitter video on the Retro or Die Twitter page of where I opened up both of those carts and show that off. But all in all, I think Capcom is doing the right thing. I think more companies should follow in their footsteps, and seeing the cash flow that they're going to get from this fucking game when it releases. It's due to release on January 25th, 2019. Right after Christmas. I am going to be buying it day one. I really hope that there's going to be some sort of actual collector's edition for this game. They didn't show or explain any collector's edition for it. They just had the pre-order now. And the small details that have come out in the last week is just getting, if you pre-order, you get some sort of like special gun in the game, or you get a special theme for your PS4. That kind of thing, that kind of stuff to me doesn't appeal to me. That is stuff that goes, that's like fluff for people that care about, ooh, I want a little more powerful gun when I start the game. Survival horror for me is starting out bare bone minimum with what the game gives you to survive. That's just for me, though. For a collector's edition of Resident Evil 2, though, if they came out with some sort of, replica of, a monster or a zombie or something cool, a fucking typewriter that opens up with the game stuff inside, that stuff would make me excited. I would buy that in a heartbeat, but that stuff has not been announced yet, if it's going to be that kind of stuff, or if they're just going to have digital pre-order bonuses, which to me don't appeal to me. And the thing that I'm also excited for and glad for is that it was announced that the Resident Evil 2 remake will include the Tofu Survivor, I think the Hunk game, which was Battle Game or Operation something. And it's also going to have the big alligator in the game that everyone remembers as the big boss enemy near the middle or end of the game, which I'm happy about. Tofu Survivor is hilarious, and it's a walking piece of tofu that can talk and never die, only equipped with a knife. It's one of the funniest games thrown in there as a minigame bonus for unlocking stuff within the game. Time, number of deaths, number of special items used. And that was one thing I was a little concerned about, was if these minigames that were included with the original installment of Resident Evil 2 were going to be included for free like they were in the original version, or if they were going to be paid DLCs. So far, everything points to they're going to be free like they were on the original version, which I'm happy about. Now, with all that being said about Resident Evil 2 and Capcom, Doom Eternal, the game trailer was shown. No gameplay was shown of it, but Doom Eternal basically is Doom 2 Hell on Earth. And the reason why they didn't call it Doom 2 Hell on Earth was a mystery to me, because it's obvious right when it starts That's exactly what it is. Now, they want it to be obviously a direct sequel to their Doom 2016. And I find it funny that they're reimagining Doom. They're bringing Doom forward into this new generation of consoles, but they don't want to say that these Doom games are the replacement of Doom 1 and Doom 2, even though the original is just called Doom and their 2016 version is just called Doom. So not calling it Doom 2 Hell on Earth, I think, is silly, because that's exactly what it is. Apparently, though, I mean, the lead talking head of Bethesda says that there's a reason why it's called Doom Eternal or something like that. He's got some sort of reason why it's called that. I'll be interested to see what that is when the game comes out. Doom 2016 was really good. I'm actually currently replaying it right now just because this new game is coming out. I haven't played the Doom 2016 version since I released the video game review and beat it in 2016. Not because it was bad, just because, I get busy with other games. If you want to see that review, it's on the YouTube channel Retro or Die. Now, Rage 2 also was shown finally, the gameplay footage of it. And for me, I think it looks like it's going to be actually pretty good. Like I said, like I discussed in the last podcast, it does look like they're going to hold up to the style of the game as the last game was. How do I word that better? It's going to look and feel and play like the last game, but it's going to be more vast as far as the open world goes. Rage was a very linear game, especially in the levels where you're going through dungeons. I know they're not called dungeons, but basically they are dungeons, where you're going into a certain level of the map, like the mutant lair, and they're very linear. You're on a set path. Kind of like how Doom is, just Doom was a little more open as far as their maps are concerned. Rage was very, very linear, such as like God of War, where you're on the set path and there's a set number of enemies, and things will never change unless you make the difficulty level harder. So with this, it looks like they focused a lot more on making this game a lot bigger, and it also plays a lot faster like Doom 2016 plays. That is not a problem for me. But when you have someone like my partner Forrest on the Retro or Die podcast who played the first Rage, liked it, and the pace of it was about perfect for him, because the first Rage kind of played like how Crysis 1 through 3 played. It's not slower, but it's at that medium pace where you get to, pay attention to your surroundings, kind of look at things, fight enemies, get involved a little bit more into the details of the world and the story, where this new Rage looks a lot like Doom 2016, where Forrest tried it and he told me that he's too old to play this game because it moves too quickly. Now, I'll let him explain that on the next episode coming up this week, but for him, Rage 2, he's a little worried about that because of how fast it moves. But I know he's going to buy it either way. So, all in all, Rage 2 looks good. Fallout 76. Now, I know in the last podcast episode, it was very heavily involved when it comes to Fallout, because Fallout is one of my favorite games, and it's also one of the games that has burned me when it comes to Fallout 4. Now, Fallout 76 worries me in a way, after getting more details about it, that it's pretty much always an online game no matter what. Even though Todd Howard describes this game as a single-player game if you want it to be, it's just that all the other NPCs in the world aren't really NPCs, they're going to be people. And the thing about this is, they're relying, when they keep talking about, this person could just want to be a trader in the game and run around and trade wares with you, and another person might just want to build a settlement. Statistically, if you look at video games, especially these online games, even though they're saying this isn't an MMO, it's a very small, tied down MMO where it's not vast, say as you know, the zombie ones out there. But this one is an MMO, even though they're saying it's not. We know how a lot of people in the gaming world, online gaming world, act. They will go around killing each other rather than getting stuff done. Now, I'm not saying this is everyone, but I guarantee you, like they showed in the trailer, if you're getting experience points for murdering other players in the game, then that's what people are going to do. You know, Fallout 4 made things way too incredibly easy for players, brand new players of the game. And if you're an experienced player of Fallout 3 in New Vegas, it made things so easy it felt like you were a baby and mommy and daddy were holding your hand and just spoon feeding you the entire game. That's how Fallout 4 felt. So this game to me feels like it's going to be even easier because now they're going to be projecting this online world to the vast audience where survival isn't really survival. And they even go in to say that during the conference that their RPGs are like RPG light. And even more so with Fallout 4, it was like extra light. So I did not pre-order Fallout 76, even though it had the very badass power armor helmet. I could have pre-ordered it in a second. Yeah, I know exactly when the thing went live for pre-order on Best Buy's website. I just couldn't bring myself to spend money on a game that I probably would play for maybe a week and then put down like I did with Fallout 4. And the only reason Fallout 76 is so big is because if you really look at how Fallout 4 was, you could just take all the elements of that game, how big the section of that map was, and copy and paste and just change some things around, and there you got a bigger map. Now that this game is supposed to have dedicated servers for this game to last for years and years and years. Now, for years and years, to me that means like a minimum of 10. And if you're asking maximum, 13 years is what I'm thinking Fallout 76 will go for, if that's how long the servers are going to be run for. And then once that's over, what does the game become? But a coaster on a coffee table, basically. And if it gets to that point, are they going to patch it to where you can still play this game single player when the servers go down? Or is the game just going to be a brick? Like we saw with many other games, like Black on the PS2. So, Fallout 76, while I will get the game, I'm just going to get the standard edition, play it, see how it goes, and if it's not good, then I'll tell you it's not good. Not good in my opinion. But that's just my thoughts on that. Now, the funny thing that I did see that Bethesda did was make a funny joke on themselves about how they port Skyrim to everything. And it's not a lie. They literally have ported Skyrim to fucking everything. They would port Skyrim onto Abacus if they could. They would port Skyrim onto the Game Boy if they could. If there was a possibility, they would have that game on every platform that's ever been made. The one thing that I would hope they would do, and I would buy it in a second, is if they put Skyrim on an NES cartridge and it was somehow 8-bit style gameplay like Dragon Warrior or something like that, and I would totally get it. But they put Skyrim on Alexia, Amazon. Now, how does that work, you may ask, if you're not familiar, if you didn't see the commercial. Well, Alexia, I don't own one, but Alexia is that thing that Amazon came out with that you're like, hey Alexia, play my favorite song, or hey Alexia, what's my grocery list? That kind of thing, and it's basically Siri, but on Amazon. And they put Skyrim on it as a response game, basically. It's a text-to-speech game. So it's an adventure text-to-speech game, kind of a throwback to how the word adventure games were on the old PC. But this one is more responsive, so say like, Alexia, make my character go to the mountains. And they go to the mountains, and Alexia will be like, you are going to the mountains, and you encounter a snow troll. Snow troll is getting ready to attack you. And then you can respond by saying, you know, whatever the shouts are, or use an axe in its head, or something like that. It was funny because the trailer made it look like it was a giant joke. But they actually did port it onto Alexia. So you can go get this today and play this. I don't know how long it is. I don't know how actually serious it is. But it sounds really cool. And if I had one of those Alexia things, I would have been playing it immediately. Just because of the novelty and hilarity of it all. But seriously, Bethesda, you want to make some money on the retro market? Here's what you do. You make a whole retro line of Skyrim. Put it on the fucking NES. Put it on the Super Nintendo. Put it on the Nintendo 64. And hell, if you can't, put it on the GameCube. And I guarantee you, you're gonna make money over fist when it comes to this game. If you want to really squeeze every nickel and dime you can out of Skyrim, that's what you do. The retro market will buy it, especially if you come out with retro boxes and manuals and things like that. Just do it. We know you have the money and resources as one of the best and biggest video game producers out there. You have the money to do this. Just do it. I'm giving you that for free. Now, if you want to give me a job as someone that's going to give you good ideas on what to do for the video game industry going forward, just let me know. Now for a more serious and kind of dark topic. Well, not kind of, it is a dark topic. I read this morning, 2 hours ago. It is currently June 15th, 2018, Friday. Now, you may not be familiar with this woman. Chloe Dykestra, try to say that name 3 times fast, came out with an article today called Rose-Colored Glasses, A Confession. And she put this out on themedium.com. Now, when I saw this, I didn't think it was going to be anything out of the ordinary. I thought it was just going to be another blog about, you know, the kind of Me Too movement kind of thing, where it was very overblown, made it seem like every man was a piece of shit kind of thing, and I was just going to skip over it until I saw actual big heads in the video game industry retweeting this on Twitter. So I decided to look at it, and I saw it had to do with Chris Hardwick. And if you're not familiar with who Chris Hardwick is, he is basically the main face of the Nerdist.com, and he's also, you may also know him for The Talking Dead, along other shows of that. But this account, this confession statement on here, goes into detail about how Chris Hardwick is basically, allegedly, a giant piece of shit. He's an abusive boyfriend and also a sexual predator on this woman who was his girlfriend for a few years. Now, if you read into this story, I'm not going to get into the super details of it. If you want to read it, go read it. But basically, there is, you know, mental abuse and also sexual abuse that went on within the relationship. And Chris Hardwick, basically, like I said, is just a walking piece of crap. And because this is all allegedly, there's nothing yet being shown for proof here, aside from this lady's story. At the very end of this blog post, she has a statement on there saying that if you try to sue me or something like that, I have all the videos of proof. I have pictures of proof. I have statements of proof. And basically, she puts the ball in Chris Hardwick's court to make a response on this and come out with a public apology because he tried to basically destroy her career after she decided to finally leave him. And from what I have heard about Hollywood and read about Hollywood, with all the rampant, just disgusting shit that goes on there, that people should not be surprised about. Hollywood is a very scum-filled, dog-eat-dog, fuck the other person over kind of place. And if you're not willing to do those sort of things on a day-to-day basis to get to the top, then you're probably not going to make it. I mean, look at Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know, is still one of my favorite action stars from the 80s. But you talk to people that, you see people that know him, you've seen documentaries of people talking about him that know him and were in movies or careers with him. Arnold was a vicious fucking person. And it sounds like Chris Hardwick is cut from the same branch. Now, not the same branch as far as abuse goes. I don't know anything about that. I've never heard anyone say that Arnold was abusive. But Chris Hardwick here, the shit that I read that he would do is pretty disgusting. And I feel like because this guy is such a main face of nerd culture, nerd pop culture, and he's also held on such a high echelon of entertainment when it basically he's no higher of entertainment than I am. He talks about shit, except he's more jaded and makes things seem like everything is okay and doesn't bring up crucial points about stuff being fucked up or not. He just wants to promote things and get famous and basically kiss everyone's ass when it comes to their shows or whatever he's on. And that's another reason why I could go in forever about video game journalism and movie journalism and how it's all bullshit, mainstream type, but it's another topic for another day. I recommend all of you going to read this article and deciding for yourself, but I want to see Chris Hardwick come out with some sort of statement about this, and if he doesn't, that will definitely show that he is either guilty or he's going to be like Channel Awesome when all the Jew Wario stuff came out about him being a sexual predator. And that's something I never thought I was going to talk about on here. I'm going to touch upon it, though. It just seems like most recently within our small genre of nerd, gaming, geek kind of stuff, we have Chris Hardwick here that's a walking piece of shit, pencil neck. And then we had, more recently, the news about Channel Awesome, which is a big channel on YouTube that reviews movies, mostly known for the Nostalgia Critic, but also had many subsets of creators underneath them. One was Jew Wario. Jew Wario reviewed retro video games of Japanese and imports games, basically. And it came out that he was some sort of sexual predator of underage girls at conventions. Jew Wario killed himself a few years ago, so there's really no repercussion that's going to come of him, but it stirred up such a huge thing because Jew Wario, Justin Carmichael, was held on such a high regard by the retro gaming community, especially after he died, that, no one was going to say a bad word about him. And finally all this stuff comes out about him, and people are taken back, but what took them back even more was that nobody said anything, because the people that ran Channel Awesome knew about this stuff for a few years about him being a predator while he was still alive, and never did anything or said anything, brought it up to anybody that ran a convention. So he was allowed to get away with this who knows how many times. So that's the disgusting and sick thing about this. There are monsters out there that hide behind a fake mask. And those are the kind of people that will fall under pressure. Justin fell under pressure. He obviously killed himself for some sort of reason. And if it was because of the mistakes that he made, the disgusting mistakes he made, then the pressure got to him and he's dead now. Chris Hardwick may he may come out with a statement and he may take this to court or something like that, but he needs to come out and say something, because the stuff in this article is damning beyond belief. Now, the last thing I'm going to say about this is abuse in relationships is not a very uncommon thing. It happens a lot. I witnessed abuse growing up from both sides of my parents when they were going through the divorce. Abuse towards me, abuse towards my brother, abuse towards each other. Those are things that you see growing up, and either you're going to do one or two things when you get to be an adult. You're going to either gravitate towards that kind of behavior because it's what you know and you're comfortable with, or you're going to grow up and realize that this is the incorrect way of how people behave and act and how we're supposed to be treated in a normal society, normal quote unquote society, and break away from that. If you are with someone or around someone that treats you like shit, it doesn't really matter what kind of good memories you have with them, because if the bad outweighs the good, then you really need to take a look about your life and this life you are created with yourself and this person, and get away from that. It doesn't matter if it's a friend, it doesn't matter if it's a spouse, it doesn't matter if it's a boyfriend or a girlfriend, because yes, these things don't just happen to women, they happen to men too. I don't want to hear about like, oh, he said it happens to men, it doesn't happen to men. Bullshit, it doesn't happen to men. If you're in this kind of relationship, you need to take a serious, hard look at this and get away from it. Rebuild your life for you. Take care of you first, and you'll be a lot healthier mentally, physically, and with that will bring new people or new experiences into your life that will make you a better person, and overall, your quality of life is going to go up. That's how you got to look at these things, is the quality of life. Is your quality of life good right now? Are you happy where you are? Or when you're alone, are you not happy? Are you upset? Are you sad? Are you angry? And you need to decide for yourself what to do in those situations. And for anyone out there going through this, suicide is not the answer. I'm just going to make that clear. I don't think taking your life is going to be the answer to this. So, for anybody out there that's going through this, or knows of anyone going through this, you can get help, or you can help yourself. Just do something about it. Now, to bring up the last but not least topic on here is my second YouTube channel that I've had for a while that I barely post any content on. I'm going to start using a lot more than the Retro or Die channel. Now, do not get me wrong, the Retro or Die channel is my main channel. I will keep doing video game reviews on there. I'll keep posting some sort of podcast, episodic content on there. But the channel, for what it seems like, is pretty much dead when it comes to anything that I do when it comes to video games. Now, back in 2013, 2014, 2015, video game content was a lot more popular. It got a lot more views, it got a lot more comments, it got a lot more attention. And for me, video games is obviously something I'm very passionate about. It's something that I love to do, and the industry is what I care about. Now, when I do these reviews, they take a lot of work, a lot of effort, and a lot of hours to make. Gameplay, recording, writing the dialogue, recording the dialogue, the editing of the entire video to make it the final product. It's a long process. The Resident Evil 7 review, I think, took me a full 8 hours to do. And other reviews have taken me a lot longer than that. Like the Manhunt review was almost a 2 full day project. That's including research and everything else. So, the things that seem to be the most popular on my channel, though, is my movie reviews. And maybe that is just what I'm meant to be doing on here. What people seem to like more of what I do is movie reviews. So, my other channel, which is titled VHS or Die, is going to have a lot more movie review content on it, basically all movie review content. But the way I'm going to set it up is mostly old horror and sci-fi VHS movies. And that's all I'm going to say about it right now. But that's the current project that I'm working on aside from the Retro or Die podcast. Again, thank you guys all for your support, and if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave a like rating on the video, and if you're listening to this on iTunes, please give us a review on iTunes. There have been many of you that have been saying that you guys like the podcast, but you guys are not leaving reviews on iTunes. If you leave a review on iTunes, this helps promote the podcast by getting seen by more people in the algorithm of iTunes. So this will help the show get better and bigger. So with that, guys, thank you very much. This is Forrest from Retro or Die, and this is the Retro or Die podcast, mini episode. And I hope you guys have a good rest of the weekend, and I will see you guys next week. Well, I won't see you, but we'll be talking to you next week on episode 6 of the Retro or Die podcast. All right, guys, I am out.